Hi everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to Mind Matters. I'm just going to wait for a couple of you to join and then I'll begin. Okay, hello. Hi guys. Welcome to people who know about the series. Welcome back. And those who don't, hi. Welcome to Mind Matters. This is Naomi, your host. Mind Matters is a series where every Tuesday we talk about various aspects of mental health and how it affects people across various walks of life. Today's conversation, is about mental health and sports, right? So when you talk about athletes and sports people, no one understands pressure to perform like they do. And this is especially relevant today because the Olympics are going on. And when we as individuals and as audience members, while we celebrate their wins, we often tend to troll them very badly for their losses, and that's because we forget that at the end of the day they're human beings, and this takes a huge toll on their mental health. Now, the subject is anyway a matter of taboo, but it's also a sign of weakness when it comes to sports. Hopefully, things are changing for the better now with more and more sports people talking about this, including the likes of Naomi, Osaka, Simone, Biles, and Ben Stokes. And we're going to be discussing just this today. So our guest today is Robin Uthappa, who's a cricketer. And I don't think he needs too much introduction, but I am going to tell you something that probably most of you don't know, which is that in 2011, when he was being signed by the IPL franchise Pune Warriors, he was actually going through a terrible phase of depression. Truly, some of these sports people, are hiding behind their glories and cannot really talk about a lot of this. So we're going to add him and kind of get him to talk about this more. All right, there you go. Hi, Robin. How are you?
Hi, Nanny. How are you?
All well. Thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure talking to you, but on this subject, thank you so much. And I know we've had a
Likewise.
conversation around this earlier, but thanks
Yes, we
again for
have.
doing this.
My
Great.
pleasure.
So I'm not going to waste too much time. We're going to dive right into it. So why don't we
Sure.
start by talking about, the fact that there is a lot of conversation around mental health and sports going on, like I mentioned in my intro. So tell us, what is it that makes athletes so much more vulnerable, to mental health issues?
Well, I think it's the competitive nature of sport and the fact that the job that we do is open to criticism on a large scale, right? People can actually watch you, they see you performing, they see you playing, and then they don't really, isn't, I think, grasp the fact that it's just a job for us also, but
Yeah.
something we're truly passionate about. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's also something that puts food on the table for us. So I think that gray area kind of leaves us open and vulnerable to a lot of attacks, and especially after the onset of social media, we kind of see it and experience it so much more now.
Yeah, definitely. And you went through a terrible phase of depression, right? So tell us about
Yeah.
that. And when did you know that you needed help? And after actually realizing that this is something that you're dealing with, how long did it take for you to finally seek help?
Well, for me, it actually took a while, as in it really snuck up on me. I didn't really know I was going through it. I think until one of my very close aunts kind of noticed that I wasn't okay, and she just kind of brought it to my mom's notice, I think, and then my mom kind of acted on it, and I think my aunt kind of suggested it to my mom, saying that he doesn't seem okay. Perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea to send him to a counselor, which at that point was a little
Robin, I think we've lost you there for a bit. Okay, I think there is some technical issue. I'm just going to add Robin again. Okay.
Sorry
I think
about that.
no worries. Great.
I
We
think
can
it's
go
an
on.
ongoing thing. I had issues yesterday as well.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
no worries.
yeah, I was coming back to, like I said, I think it crept up on me, and it was an aunt who kind of figured out that, I was going through something, and then she kind of asked my mom to send me to a counselor. And back in 2008 and 9, mental health was such still a taboo, much as in, and we're still kind of breaking out of those shackles today. And it was just such a difficult period at that point in time. And then my mom very quietly took me to a counselor. And it is when I went to a counselor is when I actually realized that, hey, there is an issue. That I'm feeling a lot of things. But I think when the conversation itself began at home, is when I felt like, okay, I know that there's something wrong, but I don't quite know what it is. You kind of
Yeah.
feel it and you kind of live with it, and then you feel like, you're just not feeling good. You feel like it'll kind of evaporate after a few days, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way. And then it just begins to weigh on you. And I think if people aren't really close to you and they're not really attuned to you, then they miss it. But I think the real people who care about you, who really love you, they kind of notice it and pick up on different things. So I think it's essential to be able to share that with people that you love, or if you're feeling down, if you're feeling like weighed down and bogged down, then I think to have a conversation with people that you love and trust could be a way of picking it up early. But they should also be kind of attuned to the fact that, okay, you know what, this person probably needs help.
Definitely. And what is the pressure to perform really like? And when you're there, out there on the field, how do you shut all of that out to just kind of focus on cricket?
It's actually quite hard, honestly. Initially, one of the mistakes I made was, how we Indians are when it comes to taking medications. When a doctor, writes you a prescription and says, antibiotics for 5 days, and then we do 3 days and we say, oh, we're feeling better, so we don't need it anymore.
Correct.
That's exactly how I treated mental health. And you think that you just start feeling better, and then you feel like, okay, you don't need the counselor anymore, you don't need help anymore, you can sort it out yourself. But that's not true at all. You need to stay the course. That's the mistake I did initially. I went in for a few months, I think a bunch of sessions, and after that, I felt a lot better. I started feeling stronger, and then I stopped going to my counselor. And then the kickback was really hard. And then it's when I went back again is when she explained to me that, mental health is a lot more about staying the course, and it's not like a quick fix. It's not like a common cold. It's like you stay with it, and you really
Yeah.
kind of heal you, because you have to heal mentally, emotionally, and sometimes this manifests physically as well. It can take a toll on you, and then for me, it did physically as well. It manifested massively physically for me. Really looked like a tub, honestly. It looked like a big barrel in 2011, and really, a lot of my even close cricket friends didn't realize that, hey, Robin's like something's wrong,
Yeah.
and it goes amiss in a lot of ways like that. But it's important to kind of again pay attention to those little aspects. But when you're playing the sport, what can happen is you channelize all your energies into the sport, and you feel like if you do well there, this will take care of that. But that's not true. It slowly starts building on you. And then ever since I've been through this, I've been particularly observative about, my mental health.
Yeah.
And for me, these bubbles that we have are massively challenging. So I'm
Yeah,
not
I was just
surprised
going to
about
come to
Ben
that
Stokes,
actually. Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Tell us about that
pulling out.
experience. I mean, how exhausting is it? And I know that a lot of especially international cricketers have kind of pulled out of the IPL given the biobubble fatigue. So what is it really like, and what kind of a toll does it take?
The fatigue is very real, Neni. I think the fact that it seems very nice from the outside, but I
Yeah.
promise you, you can be in any five-star hotel and people leaving free meals outside your door, and just when it's time for a meal, you kind of get in, and especially the quarantine period can be emotionally excruciating, to be very honest. Because nobody sees you, you can't meet anyone. Food is left outside of your room. You don't even see the person bringing in the food. They knock the door, and by the time you like, even if you run to the door, they're already gone. You don't see anybody, right? And then uh, in the and then you do that for like 14 days or 7 days, and then you're cooped up in a room. You can't go outside. Sometimes you're not on the ground floor, so there's no balcony or anything of that sort. That gives you a little bit of respite. There's no fresh air. There's zero fresh air because you're in an AC room, right? So there's no fresh air. Sometimes you're locked. You're in a high-rise building, and then you're just overlooking, say, the ocean. I was in a hotel in Bombay overlooking the ocean, and I promise you, it got so depressing. I could feel the rooms closing in on me after a few days, and I was kind of taking it out on my family. My wife, she didn't call me back in half an hour. If she's doing work and she didn't call me back in half an hour, I was getting really irritated. It can manifest in different ways, and it really feels like emotionally, like no matter how much you read a book, watch movies, Netflix and chill, whatever you try and do, it doesn't cut it. You really need human interaction, and you need like touch and feel. You want to put an arm around your mate, or you want to high five your mate, or you want to just have a meal with your colleague. You don't have any of that, and that can be depressing, to be honest. As in, the right word would be depressing, emotionally and mentally. Like it's painful. It's really really painful. Even if say going to the IPL last year, we were in Dubai. We were in a bubble. Um, we don't get food from outside. There's a set menu. You stick to that menu. You don't get anything outside the menu. So for 2.5 months, you're eating the same food. And if people are following diets that there's no variation whatsoever. So there's, whatever emotional solace food can give you is thrown out of the windows out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing the same faces. It wouldn't make a difference if you were playing the IPL in Dubai or you were playing it in Timbuktu, because you're going straight from the hotel, going to the ground, coming back to the hotel, going to the ground. All you see are the sights on the way to the ground, and that's about it. So and then when you go from bubble to bubble, and each country has got different like quarantine rules. Like if you go to say you go to Australia or New Zealand, and 14 days in a hotel straight away. There's no questions about that, right? Now in India, our domestic bubble is a 7-day bubble. So even if you go with your team, you travel with your team, you get to the hotel, you get into your rooms, and you don't come out for 7 days. So all of these things, and then like you've literally traveled with your team, you feel like, why can't I interact with my own teammates who I've
Yeah.
traveled with? And they're like, no, you can't. Those are just the rules. It seems very doesn't make sense. There's no logic behind it. But I understand the pressures that associations like the BCCI kind of have to go undertake, or governments have to undertake, because
Yeah,
fingers are
definitely.
pointed so easily. The backlash is just a dime a dozen today. So everyone have to be extra careful, and so that makes it even more challenging on individuals who are actually going through a quarantine.
Definitely. And talking about social media, you mentioned this earlier as well. The kind of trolling that happens, especially when you've not performed, up to the mark. What kind of a toll does that take, and how do you, as an athlete, deal with it?
I experienced that for the first time in 2018, and for the first time in my life, I experienced hate on social media, which I hadn't experienced before, and I didn't take it nicely. It affected me emotionally. It affected my mental health quite a bit. I was not okay. I think after 2011, I think that was the time when it actually hit me. I was like, this is strange. I don't like. And then so immediately I took certain measures. I spoke to my agents, my managers. I shut off all comments on social media for a period of time till I felt I was normal again, or till everything kind of blew over. But people don't understand that no one's going out there to underperform, or no
Yeah.
one's going out there to not succeed, right? Everyone's going out there with the intention and the will to succeed. And sometimes it doesn't come off. And unfortunately, our worst days or our bad days, like a regular corporate, going person, a corporate, employee, their work isn't displayed to millions and billions of people to see, right? So if they
Exactly.
have a bad day, they've had a bad day at the office, they come back home, brush it off, and go back and try and have a good day the next day. And if we have a bad day, God forbid we have a bad day that's displayed to the millions and billions of people around the world, then we are taken to task for it, right? Because there are a lot of emotions attached to it. That's understandable. It comes with the job. But having said that, there has to be empathy, which I think is a miss today in society in general. I think if we as a human family, can be a little bit more empathetic about about everything in life in general. I think, it's difficult for everyone. Everyone's going through their own struggles. I'm not the only one who's gone through depression, and I'm not, and Ben is not, Stokes is not the only one who's going through depression today. There are millions and billions of people going through depression in different forms, or going through mental health issues, and they just want respite from everything that they're going through. And I just think that if we can be a little more empathetic as the human family, if we can just give a little bit more of love, I think we do so much better as a society in general.
Definitely, definitely. And has mental health, become a part of, the locker room conversations over the past years? Is it something that you've discussed with your teammates?
No, it comes up in conversations. I was just talking to one of my, colleagues, peers who's in England, and he was telling me, Rob, we've been here for 3 months, but we've only played one match so far. You could be in England, and you could be, in our perception, like, oh, he's in England. It's a lot better than things that are in India, with lockdowns or timings and all of that. And they don't have any of that there. But at the same time, they aren't playing matches, and that's the reason, that's the purpose of them being there, right? And they aren't playing matches. And the social media can give you such an obscure image, such a colored image of what's actually going on within a person, right? Because you see normal pictures, you see them walking through gardens, or you see them with with their mates or with their partners. But the thing is that in reality, the whole purpose of going there is to play cricket, but they're not playing cricket. To be honest, they're waiting on to play cricket. And even if a match does happen, they may not be playing in the 11. So, emotionally, that can be very taxing as well, because that puts a lot of pressure on you, because people think like, oh, he's gone on a tour for India, and if he doesn't perform in one game, it's like, he hasn't performed. He's been on that tour for so long. These are the things, these are the conversations that come up, but people don't really look into those aspects and say that, hey, this can have an impact on somebody, and have like a career threatening impact sometimes. It could actually end someone's career. And that's why people need to be a little bit more thoughtful about saying things. And this is where the pressures of being a sports person are challenging in that sense. Like even the Olympic athletes today, now they're in the Olympic village, but there are a lot. I'm without an iota of a doubt, I'm certain there are like a bunch of restrictions that give them no freedom, right? Tomorrow, I may not be the kind of person who goes out and has a meal if everything is open, right? But to not have the option itself feels restrictive, right? Feels restrictive. Like like we as humans kind of rebel against that, right? On a very human level, right? So when there are restrictions put in place, you just feel like like someone's like not allowing you to be yourself, and you have to work within a certain boundary, and that doesn't like allow you to express yourself fully, perhaps as an athlete, as a human being. And if you're emotionally attached to what you're doing, if you're passionate about what you're doing, it can actually have an impact on your expression in your performance, right? So these are things that not a lot of people think about, and they're very judgmental about performances. But all of these things go a long way. Like today, I certainly believe that, even our Indian contingent, say the archers, or just for example, I'm taking a few names. I'm not being specific, but a lot of these people, there are a lot of restrictions, and their performances possibly wouldn't be as good as they would be under normal circumstances, because there are so many restrictions in place. So to have that space to give empathy and say, hey, this is possible, and this could have possibly kind of restricted their expression of performance, will make them feel a little bit more supported, and I think that's what we need to be, and those pressures are very real pressures that athletes go through.
I can imagine. And on your low days, how do you tackle with those, and what has your experience been like? If you can shed some light on
that. On those low days, you want to stay away from social media. There were days that initially before the onset of social media, as sports people, we would never read the newspapers. Like we'd only read the newspapers if we had good days. If we had bad days, we don't even look at the newspapers.
Yeah.
And right now, if you have bad days, we don't even look at social media. We don't even we refrain from opening it, because there'll be trolls, there'll be tweets, there'll be memes, and families are involved. They abuse the families, they abuse children, they threaten families, and it's just so obscene. And it just becomes it not only affects you, it affects your concern and for the people you love, right? And that is like uncalled for. There has to be a line drawn in society as to what is okay and what isn't okay. I'm sorry.
And in terms of the infrastructure, I mean, it's a known fact that we don't have the best infrastructure for athletes, to ensure that they have sound mental health. So I mean, in your opinion, what kind of infrastructure needs to be put into place? What kind of systems need to be put into place to help athletes?
Well, I think in a country like India, it's going to be very hard, Naini, because I think the fact that we have so many people playing a competitive sport, and I think the general law of human nature is that where there's volume, there is no value, and when there's no volume, there's a lot of value, right? And I think that that seeps into this in this instance as well, right? In this context as well. I think India will have to go a long way to kind of build up an infrastructure for it. You would like the independent associations to be involved, boards to be involved in this, the government and the boards to work hand in hand to kind of set up an infrastructure for this. And I think if we can do that, it would go a long way in helping people, live out fuller careers, to be honest. Today, people see Virat Kohli, I'm using Virat as an example, as someone who performs really well, but people don't understand the fact that the man's been on the road 95% of a year, right? He barely gets time off. And similarly, guys like Rohit Sharma and guys who play all three formats of the game. And it takes a toll on your emotions, on who you are as a human being and what you identify with as a human being. And if there's going to be a support structure for it, it would go a long, long way. And you really hope that those things can be put in place, And I think with the likes of, say, Simone, and we had our Osaka coming out. We have Ben Stokes who's come out right now. A lot of other cricketers have come out over the last few months who opted out of tournaments. All of them, I think, would coming forward would only make it more more important for boards to kind of stand up and take notice and say, hey, this is something we need to address. And we hope that in time that the infrastructure for it will be built. But I think in India still it might take a little while. I think even in the corporate sector, I don't know how the corporate sector works, but if it can work from there, even if those structures can actually come up with infrastructure for mental health, it would go a long way.
Yeah, 100%. And are there any safeguards in place for young players, for them to kind of put in place their mental health while striving to build a career in sports so that they can, there's equal sort of balance of mental health and physical health?
No, there isn't at the moment. Right now, there isn't anything whatsoever, and that's why I think the energy of a team becomes so important. I think the leader and the coaches in charge should really make sure that everyone is paid attention to, especially if you have a larger contingent. The guys who aren't playing can go amiss, can really fly under the radar, and their mental health can fly under the radar. So to have a communicative team who communicates with every member of the team, make sure everyone's paid attention to, plays a big role. And this you can use the same kind of structure for corporates as well. You have a team leader and you have a couple of managers under that. You make sure that everyone in the team is paid attention to. Everyone's had a very real human interaction with about their health and how they're doing, and if they're lacking in performance, if they are being given enough attention within the group. So I think in that structure, you can actually pay a lot of attention to all of these aspects.
Yeah. And on an individual level, some advice that you'd like to give, especially to young players, who.
Well, I think with young players, I think anyone growing up right now, one of the good things I did, I think as a youngster in 2011, 2012 was the I hired my own personal coach, and in doing so, I had this one person that I could share all of my emotions with, all of my fears, all of my doubts with, without without having any judgment. I trusted my coach completely. And I think, I think that became the onset of a lot of cricketers having their own personal coaches and having someone that they trust. And I would highly recommend any cricketer or any sports person having that one person. I think within individual sports, it's a lot easier, but I think within team sport, especially with, differently skilled team sports. So like cricket's got different skills, but it's still a team sport. So in that sense, if you have one person, whether it's a family member or a coach or your best friend, someone that you trust, where you can share and be vulnerable with, you have that one person to kind of fall back on, that will go a long way in making sure that you're mentally fine. And then this one person that you're sharing with, you want to make sure that this person is aware of your mental health, your mental state, your mental well-being. I think that can really become a strong support system. And a lot of players are doing that today, Nanny. But I think with a lot of youngsters coming up through the ranks, to actually have that, say in the form of parents or in the form of a sibling or in the form of your coaches that you can actually share with and be vulnerable with, especially with men. I think sportsmen in general, I think irrespective of men or women, I think women are much stronger mentally than men are in that sense. There's a lot more fortitude in that sense. So I think even with women to actually be vulnerable, for a sportswoman to be vulnerable is very, very hard, because they need to be extremely mentally strong, and especially because of the judgment that society has upon them as women, and emotional and this and that, so they have to be extra strong. And I experienced that with my wife, so when she decides to be strong, because she's a former sports player, a sports person, so when she decides to be strong, she's extremely strong. You can't get through her. But the minute you see her being vulnerable, she unravels. And that there's that side with women. And so the minute they put their guard up, you can't get through them. So, to have room for that is extremely critical, And I think with any sports person, to be able to have that one person to share your fears, doubts, vulnerabilities with, becomes crucial, will help you deal with your own mental health in a much better way.
In a much better way, definitely. Great, Robin. I think this was a fantastic conversation and a much, much needed conversation. So thank you so much once again for your time. It was lovely speaking to you as always. And for all our viewers, we'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of Mind Matters. Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you all for watching.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.